Welcome to From Students to Licensed Professionals, Protecting Your Rights.
Welcome to From Students to Licensed Professionals, Protecting Your Rights with attorney James Kosnett. James has represented licensed professionals for decades, helping doctors, nurses, dentists, teachers, real estate professionals, and anyone licensed in the state of California. I'm Lisa Mosby, and today we're taking a closer look at how licensing board investigations actually work and what is happening as a case develops. Welcome back, James. Thanks for joining me again.
Hi, Lisa.
What triggers a licensing board to open an investigation in the first place?
Usually it's a complaint, typically from one of your clients. You may not have any idea, or one of your patients. You might not have any idea that something went amiss, but they'll make a complaint to your board, and the board will that complaint will trigger an investigation. Sometimes it's by a competitor who might think that you're doing something wrong by the way you're advertising, or by some practice. Maybe they claim you took advantage of them in some way, stole a client or a deal. It could be because you might have committed some infraction or misdemeanor or felony that gets reported to them. They find out from the public records or from the police or the prosecutor's office that there's a criminal case going, and that will often trigger a board investigation.
So once an investigation starts, what is the board actually trying to figure out?
The board is trying to figure out if the public needs to be protected. So they're not concerned like a criminal prosecutor is with getting a conviction. They just want to know if there's something going on here where they're concerned, maybe with a doctor. Maybe he hasn't done anything illegal, but they still feel that it's not a safe practice what he or she is doing. So the board's job is to protect the public. So they'll go after someone even where the police or the criminal prosecutor may drop the case because it's just not that clear. The evidence might not be enough to get a criminal conviction beyond a reasonable doubt, not enough to get a jury to convict. But the board's standard is much less. They don't need that level of proof. Their job is to go in there and to protect all of us, protect the public from wrongdoing.
And James, what kinds of records or evidence are investigators focused on gathering during that period?
The investigator will get first the original information, such as perhaps the complaint of the individual that's maybe the former client that's complaining about the chiropractor who they feel injured them or took liberties with them or somehow, or the realtor that was working both sides of the deal and didn't, whatever they feel, whatever they suspect is amiss. And they'll talk to that person. They'll gather all the documents that they can. They'll talk to any public authorities, such as if their police are involved or the prosecutor's office. They'll cooperate with their government colleagues in the agency, the civil side of things. They'll gather everything they can before they even contact you. So by the time you find out about it, you can rest assured that that this investigation has been going on for some time.
And then how do they build a case as they move forward?
Well, they're going to build a case. They're going to use everything they can, and they'll often try to catch you unawares. They'll call you up. They might even come over your house or your office and show up unannounced. I just have a few questions. Don't answer any questions. Tell them you're busy at the moment, but you will get back to them. Can you please have they'll show you their card. Take it down. Take down their name. Ask them for their contact information, their, their email, their phone number. Find out their title, where they work, and say, I'll get back to you. Then call me or another attorney to defend you. Don't try to answer the questions yourself.
And what do professionals usually misunderstand about how these investigations are handled? And why do you advise them to not discuss anything with the investigators?
Well, you know, a lot of times the professionals, particularly the ones who are innocent, feel that, well, if they just explain it to the investigator, it'll go away. They'll just, oh no, it didn't happen like that at all. Here's what happened, or here's why I did what I did. They think that the investigator is in a position to go, oh, I see. Okay, no problem. We're going to dismiss this matter. No, the investigator doesn't have that authority. The investigator doesn't have that power. The investigator is just taking all this information in and they're going to put it in their report. So you're not going to gain anything by getting the investigator or trying to get the investigator on your side and convince them that you're really in the right. All you're going to do is play all your cards in advance and let the people against you know how to defeat you.
And I'm curious, James, where do you see investigations become more serious or start to shift directions? You've worked with many, many hundreds of these cases. What things stand out?
Well, they don't usually shift, or you don't really, they hold their cards close to their vest. Okay, so they're going to want to talk to you. At some point, the investigator is going to want to interview the licensee. Okay, so I have certain techniques that I've developed over the years to protect the licensee. First of all, I'm usually entitled under the Business and Professions Code to either a copy of the file including a copy of the complaint or at least a summary of the complaint. And I'll get that before I have my client sit for an interview, and I'll discuss that with my client. Then, often, if I feel an expert is going to be needed in this case, because quite often the board is going to have an expert on the other side against us, we often need and want to have an expert. I'll try to hire an expert in advance and consult with that expert, and my client can describe what he or she did and what happened. And I like to hear from that expert if my client was really in the right. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've made mistakes. If they're in the right, I'll feel much better about having the client talk more freely to the investigator and explain the circumstances of the case or of the patient, what the treatment was, how the situation was handled. If I've had that expert weigh in and say that my client did not fall below the standard of care, that's very powerful. So I like to do that in advance. Sometimes I'll tell the board that I don't think that the summary that they provided me is adequate, and I want to see the entire file. They don't often like to produce the entire file. They can redact names and protect their informants, but still they don't want to do it. Sometimes they'll stop there, and they won't even press ahead and ask for an interview. Sometimes they will, and they'll go to court, and they'll try to get a court order, and I'll tell the judge, sure, we'll sit for an interview, but Your Honor, aren't I entitled to see the file and to see the information first? Often the judge will order them to give me that information. And if the judge doesn't, it says, no, Mr. Kosnett, the summary you've gotten is adequate. I'll say, fine, of course, Your Honor, if that's your order, I will sit for the interview. So there's nothing to be lost by pushing it in the right situation. And see, that it's all involves in the skill of lawyering and your experience. When to spend that extra money, to go that extra mile, to push back, or when to just know you're not going to get anywhere by that. So let's just go ahead and proceed. I'll tell you something else. Even when I'm ordered to sit for the interview, that doesn't mean that we lose all our privileges. For example, the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. I had a interview just recently where I had a licensed professional take the Fifth Amendment to every appropriate question that involved his relationship with a former patient of his. So there's various things that we can do that to protect our client, and how we handle each case depends on the facts and circumstances of every case.
This next question probably depends on those same facts and circumstances, and that is, how long does an investigation usually take, and what can cause the delays or acceleration of a decision?
The investigator will take their time. The government moves slowly at best, you know that, and usually these offices have limited budgets anyway, and compared to the number of cases they have, they're often backlogged. So it could take weeks or months. It could even take over a year. So you don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of times you don't hear anything for a while. And the client tells me, James, this is bothering me. Can't they wrap it up? Can't you find out what's going on? And I say, I will if you want me to. But my advice is let a sleeping dog lie. In other words, don't stir the pot. No news is good news. If they've left you alone and there's nothing online, there's nothing in the record, there's nothing bothering you in your practice, do your best to forget about it and go on with your life and go on with your business and earn a living make hay while the sun shines, and continue. And let's hope that they've backburnered it, or they've got bigger fish to fry than you, or they're not getting, maybe they found the problem. Maybe they found that the person that they're talking to about you is unreliable. They found discrepancies and contradictions. The person's changed their mind about things, or things they told them didn't pan out. And maybe it could be all good things for us. That could be why it's taking so long. So it's better just to wait.
And James, it can be a long process, but what I'm curious about is, what are the possible outcomes once the investigation is complete?
It's very rare that you get a safe haven, a certificate of innocence, a finding in your favor from an investigation. Typically, if the investigation is favorable, they won't even tell you. They just won't proceed against you. It's very rare that they'll say, oh, we've checked you out, or we've checked out your client, and they're fine. You can rest easy. Why should they? They don't, because something might come up the week after they tell you that contradicts it. Maybe another complaint from another client or another patient, and suddenly they want to reopen everything. So they usually will there's no law that says they have to close and conclude, okay? So nothing might happen. You might not hear anything, or you might get the next step, which is the filing of an accusation against you. This is what it's typically called, an accusation. And it's an accusation that says that you fell below the standard of care and there's cause for discipline on your license. This could be anything from a warning or a public reproval, which is like a public scolding, a wagging of the finger that's in the online and in the records, to a probation, which is also known as a restricted license, which maybe makes you comply with certain terms and limits your practice for a certain period of time, to a possible suspension for a period of time, which is pretty bad, or the worst, which is revocation. And then once
So,
that accusation is filed, then there's a case. Now you're not dealing with the investigator anymore. You're dealing with a deputy attorney general or some attorney for the board or agency. And now you proceed to either you do discovery, and then you proceed to either settle and resolve the case or proceed to a trial, an evidentiary hearing, which is the same thing as a trial in front of an administrative law judge. And he or she will decide the case.
thank you for walking me through those steps. Is there something specific that might separate cases that move forward to a formal action from those that are just closed?
Well, it's really the seriousness of the allegation and the level of proof. The more serious it is, or the greater the level of proof, the more likely it is to result in a finding internally against you and the initiation of an accusation. And the more minor the charges are, or the more sketchy the evidence is, the more likely it is that it'll just linger on the back burner while they see if the case builds up, more information comes in, something happens to make them feel that we've got to protect the public here.
It's a really interesting process, isn't it? Because they
Yes,
kind of leave you hanging. You're still in business, you're still operating. You don't really have clarity. There's no end point unless the next step, unless it advances to that next step. Can
that's
you
correct.
offer some words of encouragement to our audience, to someone who might be in limbo, might be, in the waiting game, so to speak?
Yeah, my advice is don't bear this burden yourself. Go to an attorney. Most attorneys, certainly including myself, will our fees are going to be based on what stage it's at and how far it goes. So we're not going to hit you up with some big fee in the investigation stage, because we're going to hope for you, really, we are, that we can resolve it and that it won't go any further. And if I do that, I'm delighted. That's my job. And I've made a client that will look to me in the future, or refer his or her colleagues to me in the future. And I'm just delighted. And then if it goes to the next stage, of course, there'll be more work, so there'll be more fee. But don't try to save money by avoiding getting the advice of counsel right away. The sooner you get the advice of counsel, the sooner we can nip it in the bud, or protect you. And if it should go further and proceed further, to put you in the best position to get the very best outcome we can.
Wonderful. And that's where we'll leave it today. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of From Students to Licensed Professionals, Protecting Your Rights with James Kosnett. If you're facing a licensing board investigation or have concerns about your professional license, visit professionallicensedefense.org to learn more and schedule a free consultation. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.